I don't know if you would like to quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for having me. So I grew up in the Midlands as the eldest child of first generation immigrants. My early education was at a Catholic school, and from there, I developed a passion for science, leading me into cancer research. I completed a PhD in cancer immunology, but I found myself like a little disheartened by the environment and sort of the lack of connection to real world applications. And so from there, I kind of leapt into the tech industry and I joined a startup in London. And I remained in tech for several years. Um, but my passion for creating meaningful change eventually led me to the social impact sector. And most recently, I completed an MBA at Imperial College, where I've been able to sort of merge my a very diverse experience into more purpose-driven career. And so, yeah, that brings us to today.
Could you tell us a bit more about what condition do you live it with, and how has this condition impacted your professional life, and what adaptations have you made to manage both your career and health?
Yeah, so I'll start with the conditions. So I have seropositive rheumatoid arthritis, which is a condition where there's detectable antibodies in my blood that attack my body, and that leads to joint inflammation. Um, though I was officially diagnosed when I was 18, I had been experiencing chronic pain since the age of 11. Um, and then in terms of challenges, so it was quite early when I was diagnosed. I think I'll start with the physical side. So there's the challenge of coping with constant pain, the uncertainty of flare-ups, and trying to find a way to communicate these issues to friends and family and also colleagues. I found quite challenging because it's just not an easy thing to do. And obviously there's a lot of stigma. There's a lack of understanding. But I'd actually say that the most significant challenge has been accepting the condition itself. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with it. When I was diagnosed, I was told that I was unlucky, and I didn't know anyone with the same condition, especially anyone that looks like me, my age and sort of being Indian. And yeah, it was very isolating. And throughout, university and work, I would often mask the symptoms, and I wasn't honest with myself, and I wasn't honest with the people around me. And I don't think that helped. And so not many people knew about my condition. And, I look healthy. And so what happened was I suffered in silence. Um, and that just makes it an incredibly lonely experience. And if I look at treatment, um, it was a series of trial and error medication, and each of them had like serious side effects, like folic acid depletion, sickness, and nausea. And these medications are often immune suppressing, which means I had to be extra cautious about infections, and that was very tricky to navigate, especially when you're young and you just want to be with your friends, go to festivals, and do all these things. Um, and then when it comes to like my career, um, that has also been incredibly challenging. There's no rule book, there's no guide. And a lot of our identity is shaped on our career and our work. And um, how I navigated it, and at first I don't even think I realized that I was navigating it this way, but I would often take roles that were either created for me or by me, positions that initially didn't exist, or allowed for a lot of flexibility, which back then, we're talking 15 years ago, didn't really exist. There weren't many, which probably led me to sort of the startup-y world and flexibility nowadays is quite an overused term, I think. So I will probably go for, let's use moldability. So I was able to sort of like mold the position around my needs because, in startups, they're quite small. There's a lack of hierarchy. And so, I was able to do that. So yeah, those were the probably most significant challenges.
What advice would you give to someone who has just been diagnosed with a similar condition?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, and I think the best way to answer that would be to maybe talk about how I dealt with these challenges and how I sort of navigated things. And I think my first advice would be to learn how to accept the condition, um, because it's a journey and it actually just takes a very long time, and you've got to start from somewhere. Um, but I think with acceptance, I think meeting other people who've faced significant challenges in their life, and that's, let's be honest, that's everybody, but not everybody talks about this. And so if you can start talking about your challenges, and it doesn't have to be somebody with the same condition, we go through many different challenges in our life. And I think being able to talk openly to people about that, it helps them, but it also helps you to learn how to talk about it more confidently and sort of learn language around it. And I would say that is probably my first advice. And for me personally, learning to do that with my friends was a big first step. And then, I have a research background, and I think that has been invaluable. That helped me to self-advocate. So my second piece of advice would be to learn to self-advocate. Again, it doesn't have to be specific to your condition, but you've got so many means of people doing this. You've got YouTube, you've got social media, and learning how other people are doing it can help you figure your way of doing that. Because that could be writing, that could be making videos, that could just be talking to people about it. But learning kind of the method that works for you is really valuable. And going back to the fact that I have a research background, it really helped me search and kind of sift through all that information that's online, because it is overwhelming. And I think having that background helped me to navigate that, and also being able to ask the right questions to my doctors and clinicians. Everybody has a different opinion, and I don't think it's encouraged a lot in this country, but there is no harm in seeking different opinions, going to find a different clinician and just getting a different perspective. And I really wish that clinicians encouraged that a lot more, especially with these conditions, because there's a lot of unknown. There's a lack of data that exists, and new medications coming out all the time. And I think where you can find compassionate healthcare professionals who take the time to explain things and, I mean, validate what you're going through, I think it's hugely valuable, and makes a significant difference. But also ones that are able to say, actually, I don't know, I think is huge, because then you can kind of develop a sort of partnership. It becomes a two-way conversation rather than a one-way conversation. Um, and I would also say, that there is an advancement in research and more targeted treatment. At the beginning, I started off on chemotherapy, which had terrible, terrible side effects. And I learned how to self-advocate and kind of fight for better medication, because there are some coming out. And so I switched to antibody therapy, which was a game changer for me. Not only was it more effective, it was easier to administer, which I think is something that's not talked about a lot, is these things around treatment, the side effects. And, if you have to inject yourself every week, that takes a toll. And, these more targeted treatment come with fewer side effects, which helps that quality of life aspect, which is hugely important, but it's not always talked about with your clinician, and you sort of left on your own to do that. So my last piece of advice is community, and to try and find community, because, for me, the other challenge with that is there's not enough community, and it's really hard to find community. And so there are more coming into existence. And for me, to combat that kind of loneliness and that lack of community, and I felt that I had a lot of knowledge to share for others, I decided to create my own community called InflamMed. And even though it started with me trying to give knowledge to other people, it's actually given a lot back because I've been able to create this community that wasn't there. So yeah, that's my advice and sort of how I've navigated things, and hopefully that's useful for other people.
Quickly, I'll share with you that reminded me of something called the burden of treatment. I don't know if you've heard about this one.
No.
I know a guy who did a lot of research. He's a GP and also kind of public health PhD. He's doing just research now. And they did a big study, and the burden of treatment, just the fact of every day I have to take one treatment and I have to remember to take it. And if I forget
Yes.
it, this is a burden already in itself that is really significant.
I have
From
to
the
admit that,
outside,
yeah. Yeah.
you can see him as something, but from the inside, it's like it's a burden I will have for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's really. I'll share
Yeah.
with you probably a link.
Yeah, please do. I talk about it in the sort of the mental toll, and sort of when you talk about managing these conditions, it's the treatment has been, yeah, it's the most like significant, because if you have to take it every day, like you said, it's remembering it, and then there's the side effects, and then it's all these things, and knowing when it's not working, because there'll be a point when it doesn't work. And so, yeah, all of that is incredibly lonely. You don't connect you with people who are also on the same treatment, and they don't actually have the data yet because they're so new. And so that is really tricky. So I'll definitely read that. Thank you.
Can you share how has your involvement with InflamMed shaped your perspective on healthcare and patient advocacy?
Yeah, so I think I'll start by just explaining about InflaMed and what we're trying to do. Um, So InflamMed is a venture born out of the significant lack of community support and knowledge and insights for people dealing with, um, even taking a step back, just dealing with chronic inflammation. So this might be before you even diagnosed, and people experiencing a lot of pain. And typically with conditions like autoimmune diseases and inflammatory diseases, these can take a long time to be diagnosed. And so we purposely said chronic inflammation, and then invisible disabilities. So this talks about the social model of disability and all those things that you have to deal with. And our mission is to create a platform or ecosystem that combines the latest research, expert advice, personal stories to support and guide individuals living with these conditions. And we've already launched a digital magazine. It's a thriving online community which can be accessed at inflamed.substack.com. And additionally, I host a podcast called Invisible Insights, where we delve deep into specific topics, different conditions, raising awareness about them, but also empowering the audience with practical, actionable insights for managing their health. And our team is made up of professionals with complementary skills. So we have David Dyer, who serves as a strategic advisor, and Charlotte Bonneau, an academic who enhances our kind of depth and the reach of our content. And being a disabled-led organization, I think it ensures authenticity and relevance in everything that we do. We're very careful about the content that we put out, that we're making sure that it does add value. And we're also supported by a diverse group of advisors and contributing writers who each, individually, they specialize in different things like workplace wellness and patient advocacy. And we're very open to working with individuals who just have a want to kind of share their journey or talk about something specific. And so it's a very collaborative process, which has been probably the most exciting part of it. I think just, being able to work with individuals who have their own stories to tell, and so much insight within these journeys. I mean, these are over 10, 15, 20 years of knowledge and wisdom that don't go anywhere because there is no community that kind of I guess shapes that and puts it out into the world. And so I guess we're filling that gap, which has been, incredibly exciting. And once we started, I don't think when I created this, I didn't realize how much of a gap and need there was for something like this. And the people I've met on the way have been incredible. That it cannot be understated how much value you get from meeting somebody who just gets it, who understands the complexity of these conditions, who understands the toll that it takes, and you're just able to have very nuanced conversations, and you're able to share, different learnings and insights. These are different conditions. Autoimmune diseases there's a vast amount of them, and each individual and each person with these different conditions, they have something of value to give to somebody who has just a similar condition. And so we're trying to sort of facilitate that. And it's also been interesting to see all the different technology and digital innovation that's coming out. And there's just so many. And so it feels like, I think our job at InflamMed is to try and help people navigate all these new technologies and apps and information out there. And what we're doing is curating all that. And that's really exciting because I think it has a real potential to change people's lives.
So yeah, why is it important that innovations like Kuma Health exist, do you think?
So, I mean, first and foremost, companies like Kuma Health, addressing a particularly overwhelming and complex set of diseases, autoimmune conditions, where often there's no cure and symptoms fluctuate unpredictably over a long period of time. This is a common thread amongst these conditions. And from my perspective, one of the current and significant challenges with the healthcare system at the moment is that the approach is based on only a snapshot in time, a snapshot of data. By the time the patient sees the clinician, the flare up may have subsided. I mean, I've often found this to be the case for me. And it's incredibly frustrating when that happens, because you can see that your clinician is basing the whole appointment on information that's out of date. It's not accurate. They have 10% of the story, which, like I said, is very frustrating and can lead to a sense of helplessness. So this is where innovations like Kuma Health become crucial, because you're offering, personalized, proactive approach to autoimmune disease and its management. Again, unlike traditional methods that rely on the trial and error treatments and more like generalized advice, Kuma Health empowers individuals by identifying unique triggers, anticipating flare-ups, and it means that we can make more informed decisions about our lifestyle, and we don't have to overly rely on the current healthcare system, which, in my opinion, is just not set up for these long-term conditions. And so I think what that does is it shifts disease management from a reactive, one-size-fits-all model to a more tailored, empowering journey. It's about enhancing that overall quality of life, and potentially for millions of people. It can provide clarity, a sense of control, and just actionable insights at every step of the journey. And for me, this mission also aligns perfectly with what we are striving to do and achieve at InflamMed.